Hello, I'm Mark Stern, and welcome to one of my property advice videos. And in today's video, what I'm going to be talking about is the buying process from you as the buyer, talking you through the entire process once you've had your offer accepted by a seller. Now, there are no hard and fast rules with any of this. There is a process, but that process of purchasing from basically the day you've had your offer accepted to the day that you move in can deviate. Things can go wrong. They normally will, but it's down to a good team of people, being your solicitor, being your mortgage broker, and being your estate agent, to navigate you through the process and navigate you through any of the issues, and obviously find answers and get you through the entire process as stress-free as possible. However, you probably are, well, you should be made aware of this, and you probably heard this over your lifetime, is that buying a property, or in fact selling a property, comes only second to death as far as stress is concerned, or should I say, second to the loss of a loved one. Which goes to show you how stressful it really is. And I live this every single day of my working life, helping people and talking people through this. And one of the things that I always say to people when things get very, very tough, and you're not sure whether things are actually going to go through or not, I always say, if you've got a buyer that wants to buy and you have a seller that wants to sell, then somehow it will all work out. So let's look at the very beginning steps. So you've been in a great position. You've just had your offer accepted from the vendor, the seller of the property. And let's just look at the fact that the chain is now closed, which means that you have nothing to sell in order for you to purchase, and the seller has either found their property and that's the end of the chain, or they are breaking the chain and maybe moving abroad or going into rented, or just there's nothing, or maybe the property is an empty house in the first place. So once your agent has confirmed your offer has been accepted, the normal thing that will happen then is me as your agent will want to go through the compliance, and the compliance really is verifying your ID. So you'd send your agent your photograph ID, verifying your address, and this is done through a third party, or this verification. So in my particular case, I use I Am Property, which is Move Butler, which is linked to HMRC, and they will verify your identity as well as myself. So your ID is verified, your address is verified, and I will speak to your broker. I don't need to find the ins and outs of your broker. I don't need to pick their brains to bits. But what I want to make sure of is that you actually have either a mortgage agreement in principle, which is valid. So that means it's within the last 3 months and your circumstances haven't changed. Um, and also, I want to find out for them that they feel that your chances of getting your mortgage are very, very good. In which case, I can give my vendor the green light that financially you're in a good enough position to proceed. During that period, I'll also need to find out what your deposit is as a percentage of the purchase price of the property, because that can affect things down the line if the property gets down valued for any reason. Um, and I'll need your solicitor's details. So in order to take a property, remove it from the market, we need you to have instructed a solicitor. And therefore, once I have your solicitor's details and I have the seller's solicitor's details, what I'll do at that point is send out a memorandum of sale, which in layman's terms is just really an email, a letter, which introduces the solicitors to each other and lets them get things underway. So, as a buyer, you will then be communicating with your solicitor. You would have instructed them. You would have had to send them your ID. You would have had to send them some money to be held on account, and that money will be for them to start the work, and it will also be for them to pay for third-party expenses such as searches. So that's your start. Once you've instructed the solicitor, there's not a great deal you need to do with them at this stage. But you will be heavily involved at the beginning with your broker, because the first thing you'll need to do is actually submit your mortgage application on the property. Now, you yourself may have been accepted in principle for a certain amount of money that would cover that property. And that's great. But the lender will obviously verify you, but also verify the property. And that means that they will arrange to have a survey done on the property, which is a valuation survey. So it's not a structural survey, it's just to make sure that what you're paying is roughly the right sort of price. You're not overpaying for something. Sometimes they'll do that as a visit, a normal survey visit, which means the surveyor will be there for anything up to about half an hour. Or it can be done as a desktop, which means that they don't need to visit the property at all. They'll just do it from all the information provided from the software that they have. So you would have submitted your mortgage application. Part of that would be paying for a survey. A survey will be carried out on the property. And if all goes well and to plan, you'll normally get your mortgage offer within a week of the survey taking place. And that offer will be valid up to 6 months, which means you must have completed the transaction within the 6-month period. Now, at the same time, from that memorandum of sale, your sellers or my sellers, whoever, will be filling out a load of forms from there to give to their solicitor. And that will be various forms, including fixtures and fittings, what's being left behind and what's included with the property. It will be historical information on the property. So they've had extensions, loft conversions, then they will be supplying the information related to that. Or where all of their service providers are from, so where their gas, electricity comes from, and various bits and pieces all around that. And then once the seller solicitor receives all that information, they will then send that to the buyer's solicitor, and that will be part of the draft. That'll be the draft contract pack. Once your solicitor receives that information, which hopefully would be within a week of the process starting, they will then be in a position to apply for the searches, because they'll have the title number of the property within that pack, and raise any inquiries. So with searches, there are 3 searches: an environmental search, a utilities search, and a local authority search. Now, environmental is just that. It's the environment in which that property is situated in. So it can be if there's any contaminated land, if there have been any issues regarding neighbours, of any disputes going on with neighbours that have been reported to the local authority. And really just making sure that it's the environment in which the property is situated in, it's not harmful to your health or to or harm the value of the property. Services, utility search is just that, to make sure that you're not in the middle of the countryside and therefore you're not on the national grid, or you're not hooked up to the mains water supply and sewage supply. So that's just checking that you can get everything that you need to run your home. And local authority search is just something, and that's really talking about what's going on in the neighborhood. So if you're buying a property that's maybe overlooks some green open space, they're making sure that that space isn't being converted into a whole block of flats that would impact on your living and would impact on the value of your property, or could do. So those are the 3 searches, and those searches will take anything from 3 to 6 weeks to come back. Normally the local authority search is the last one to come back. In the meantime, your solicitor will be raising inquiries, which is basically asking questions about the property to the seller's solicitor, who will answer mainly through their own information that they have, and also through the seller. So they may ask questions, for example, if you've had a loft conversion, when was it done? Did you get all the necessary certificates, planning permissions, whatever was necessary at the time? And could you provide evidence of this? Things like, when was the electrics last looked at, and when was the gas last boiler serviced? And do you have any disputes with the neighbours? Are there any boundary issues? So it's just general things to make sure that what you're purchasing is what you think you're purchasing. So during the course of this, if you choose to, you should also instruct to have your own private survey done. Now, this does vary on what you're buying and how much you want to spend. With the survey, I always say if you're buying in a block of flats, then it's not always necessary, but you would have probably the most minimal survey because obviously, if you look at a flat in a block, it's like a one room in a hotel. There's, the infrastructure of the property is actually the block and not the individual flat. So there's very little that can actually go wrong within the walls or outside the walls of your property that would impact you. Obviously, a semi-detached house is different from a fully detached house, and fully detached house, you may want to go for a complete full structural survey, whereas a semi or a terraced, you might want to go with a mid-range building survey. So, but surveyors will be happy to discuss that with you. So you get to that point now where the searches have come back and the all the your solicitor's inquiries have been answered and your solicitor is happy with those answers. If you're getting a mortgage on the property, then the lender will also want to know what inquiries were raised and what were the responses to make sure that they're satisfied. So even if you're satisfied to go ahead, your lender who's lending you the money to buy the property needs to make sure that they are equally as satisfied. Once your solicitor is satisfied, you're satisfied, and the lender's satisfied, your solicitor then sends you a report, and you will get to read through everything that they've asked and raised and spoken about. And at the end of that report will be the contract for you to sign in order for you to exchange. So you return all your documents with your 10% deposit to your solicitor, who will then arrange an exchange of contracts. Now, that exchange of contracts can't actually take place until you have also agreed a completion date, which is actually your date that you're going to move property. So at that point, once you've agreed the date with your sellers, then your solicitor will exchange the contracts, and your money is then ordered, your balance is then ordered to pay for your property on the day of completion. And on the day of completion, the property completes, the transaction is completed once your funds are all transferred over to the seller's solicitor. And that is, in short, very, very easily explained, the buying process. And if you have any more questions on that, please feel free to pick up the phone and give me a call. Thank you.